watching Jinshi absolutely lose his mind with Lulan's replacement, because it's been 10 days since Maomao's missing and he has no idea where she is. It was so satisfying to watch. But it's also a testament to how Jinshi is slowly shedding his palace eunuch persona and turning into what he really is, the crown prince of the kingdom. And I think the next season is when he's finally at the helm and taking over things and basically clarifying his position, because if he wants to be with Maomao, if he wants to have that kind of power to go out and save Maomao, he needs everything he could at his disposal. And the most important thing is his identity. Because as a palace eunuch, he can barely do anything. But as the crown prince of the country, he can potentially take hold of the army and storm the place where Maomao is being held. Hello and welcome to Talk About Drama, where we talk about what's hot and what's not in the drama world. And today we're going to talk about the Apothecary Diaries and what an epic conclusion the second season has been, because I'm still not over it. It was so satisfying. And when I saw the Ghost Talks episode, I did have an understanding that, this court lady is going to come back later on, because things don't just happen for the sake of it in Apothecary Diaries. There's always a reason for a character to be introduced. And when there was a callback to this court lady being the person that, had a child and the child was sent out, and then Jinshi placed together the pieces of the puzzle and found out that, she is the source for the court lady who faked her own death and potentially tried to harm Jinshi, Suirei. It all made sense. And, since she was really old, I'm guessing that Lady Tai Ho was Suirei's grandmother. So the mother is still there. And, since they're all connected to Shisho, the guy who's Lulan's father, I'm guessing she's Lulan's sister. Because they clearly cared quite a lot for each other. When Maomao played with her and, tried to sound her out with the snake. And, Lulan, as in a disguise, went out to help her, and she was really nice and kind to her. So either she's her attendant or she's her sister, so it's one of the other things. But they've clearly grown up together and they clearly know each other, and she clearly knows her aversion to snakes, because this coat lady, she faked her own death and she's afraid of snakes. So it was quite funny to watch, but because you've done something that's defying heaven and earth, but you're afraid of earthly things. That's for later on. And the way he had this epiphany that it's all connected to that one concert, and he basically stormed the Garnet Palace and was extremely calculative in terms of who's sitting there, and he scans the entire room and made sure, because she was acting really sketchy and basically not communicating with Jinshi directly, and he figured out that she's a fake by the mole near her eyebrow. And the way he completely lost it, because when he was talking to the court lady out in the open and talking to her about Dai Ho, he was still trying to rein himself in, because he still had a moment where he held himself back and said, well, Jinshi, calm down. You're a eunuch. You have to be your merry little self, and you have to be your harmless little persona, and you're not allowed to lose it. Because the identity that you have in front of everybody, you're Jinshi the eunuch. Because once Jinshi dropped his palace eunuch persona, his voice became heavier. And, the timbre of his voice increased, because as a eunuch, as somebody who's missing a couple of vital body parts, your voice becomes a little bit thinner. You don't have facial hair, and you become more of a feminine version of yourself. Whereas Jinshi, who has all of his body parts intact, his voice is heavier. And, it's more of got a manly touch. So when he reverts to his palace eunuch persona, his voice becomes thinner, and he becomes more genial and amiable. But then as Jinshi the crown prince, his voice is heavier, and he's growling, and it's just that difference in, obviously the difference in expression, because I don't think Jinshi would make that expression, but also that difference in voice was such a good thing to include, because it highlights the fact that Jinshi is Jinshi. He's not a eunuch, he is a crown prince, and when needed he can be the voice of authority. He can take charge of the situation. And it's also so reminiscent of how Maomao reacts when she's really pissed off, and when she's really at work and she's down, just getting things done. And they're so suited towards each other. But the moment that court lady saw him, and she had a callback to the previous emperor, and the way she completely lost it was a wake-up call for Jinshi, essentially, because to him at that point, he was still had that role of eunuch in the back of his mind running, and he still had that duty to the royal palace that, I'm maintaining it, I'm managing it. But from that moment on, he had this epiphany that, what am I doing over here? What exactly is my role? Why am I even doing this to myself? Why am I not doing what I'm meant to do? Why am I not in that position where I can just stride forward and, rough people up and essentially demand answers? Why am I putting myself through this when, there's essentially an easier way to do it, and that is to assume my original position and, be who I am truly. And that sort of flipped a switch in him. And, he immediately went over to Lolan's palace and he figured out that something was wrong. It's related to the Prime Minister, Jisho. And he stormed the palace, he vetoed out the fake Lolan and placed the whole palace under lockdown. And at that point, Jinshi changed from being Jinshi the eunuch to Ka Zoigetsu, the crown prince. And, I just realized that when Jinshi assumed his other identity, he named, when he went out with Maomao as an undercover person, he added a Ka to his name. So he changed his name from Jinshi to Jin Ka. He basically used his own surname, which was quite a nice addition to it. But yeah, anyway, so that was the point where Jinshi changed from being a eunuch to essentially going up there and saying, I will actually fight for my position, and I will ask the emperor and I will ask everybody who stands in my way to help me ensure that, I have the power to go out and actually save Maomao. And I think this is a good turning point, because so far we've actually seen everybody play a passive role. Everybody has been trying to blow open this conspiracy. Everyone's trying to find the person who's really trying to throw the rear palace and the palace essentially into a turmoil, and, they're quietly trying to investigate what's happening in the background. But having Maomao missing is probably a turning point for the whole story, because now everyone's going to come out of the woodworks. Because you see, Maomao used to work at Gyokyu's palace and she was abducted while she was working there. And I think Gyokyu-hee, to a point, supports Maomao, and Li Hua-hee as well, to an extent, does support Maomao. And then you have the emperor himself, whose son is, lovesick for Maomao. So you have that. Then you have Lakan and Lahan, who are actively going out of their way to try to find Maomao and investigating what happened with the guns and, how it made its way to the rear palace, because they were an advanced model and they were probably imported from the West, and they were trying to find who is behind all of this. So you have people coming out of the woodworks and essentially coming out in the open and declaring it an open war, because, like I said, at this point everyone was trying to work in the background and to not startle the snake in the shadows, basically. But now, since Maomao has gone and she has been targeted specifically, everything's out in the open and the kitty gloves are come off and they are ready to fight with that person head on. And I'm assuming the person who's orchestrating all of this is not Chishu, the Prime Minister, but somebody else, because he was quite public about his appearances and the way he was always with Lolan. So I'm assuming he does not have anything to do with the rebellion, but let's see. But at the moment, his entire clan is in peril, because a high-ranking concert from one of the 4 main concerts is missing, and she stepped out of the royal palace, a place where even the former emperor's concerts, the people that the former emperor touched, was not allowed to go out, even to the point where they had to spend the entire days in the palace waiting for their death. And this lady whose precious consort, who's been conferred a title, who has this garnet palace, who essentially threw out Adohi and stepped in her place. And she stepped out without any notification, without warning, and not following the royal protocol, is put all of her servants, her entire clan at risk, because now the emperor has a genuine reason to go after her and her family and even exterminate them, because they have gone against the imperial palace, and there's nothing above the imperial palace ever. So let's see how all of that plays out. But I was reading this article the other day about how the Apothecary Diaries has a problem, which is that it's caught up to the mangas that are currently being produced, and because of the way that, they're going at a breakneck speed in terms of picking up plot points and animating them. With season 3, they'd have gone head to toe with the illustrations and the manga, essentially. So it's going to be a little bit of a problem, because more often than not, animators do use the mangas for reference points, and it's just going to make their jobs harder because it is based on a light novel. So there is original source material that is completed, I believe, but the manga is ongoing. And I think the latest that they have reached to the point is where Jinshi is just about to rescue Maomao, because it was all over my Instagram. Because I was trying to look for the trailer for the final episode. And I accidentally populated my feed with Maomao and Jinshi and spoilers. So it has reached to a point where Jinshi is going out to rescue Maomao, and I think the next light novel does go to that point. So we don't know when the next season is going to come out, and we don't really know like how it's going to play out. But we do have the original source material completed, so at least that's a good thing. But let's see how it plays out in terms of the anime and the manga sort of balancing out. But I did like the way this season focused on Jinshi, and basically it was not more focused on Maomao's outside world, but Maomao's inside world inside the royal palace. And it did sort of meander at some points, but was more to show you towards how the imperial palace's royal palace operates. And I really liked the episode where Xiaolan, Shisui and Maomao sort of went inside the royal palace baths and tried to build a connection for themselves. And Shisui sort of showed them the way of how it's all going to play out. That also is such a bittersweet episode because Shisui is not going to be Shisui for much longer. And Xiaolan would probably be out of the royal palace by the time Maomao is rescued back in because, her term was ending. And there's a good chance that, she might get employed outside of the royal palace, since she was trying to build a connection with all of those concubines and their family is outside. So probably Xiaolan's not going to be there, but I would really like to see them get together at some point because Maomao is allowed to go outside of the palace as long as she does have somebody to guarantee her. So let's see if we see Xiaolan in the future. But I'm really going to miss that girl because she's such a ball of sunshine and she's such a sweet person, and I think she balances out Maomao perfectly because Maomao being all aloof and I don't care. And then there's Xiaolan who's literally crying and sobbing at the slightest bit, and she feels. But she's not stupid. She is quite sensitive to things, but she does understand it. And she was probably the first person to go out of the way to try and read and write. And she joined the school because she wanted to do something for herself. She understood that, I only have myself in this world. And since my parents have given up on me, does not mean I can give up on myself. And she had this perseverance around her that is very hard to find, especially when you're thrown into such bleak circumstances. And I really applaud Xiaolan for that. We really like to see her in the future. But I'm not too sure if she does appear. And Shisui, why did you have to abduct Maomao at this point? Gyokyuhi is just about to give birth. I think after everything she's done, Maomao deserved to see Gyokyuhi and her child gives birth safely before she was abducted like Shisui. I would really not forgive you for this one because Gyokyuhi, at such a delicate point in her pregnancy, was trusting Maomao to the point where she allowed Maomao to bring her previously exiled from the royal palace stepfather back in because she knew that she would be able to help her through her stepfather, and if it was indeed a breech delivery, it would be essential for her to have somebody that she trusted at her side. And she trusted Maomao enough to allow Liuman back in. Like, this was the guy who was expelled, and Gyokyuhi, just because Maomao said that he would be a big help, allowed him back in. So this is the amount of trust that she has in Maomao, and I really was looking forward for Maomao to be there and to help her in the delivery. But she's like, why did you do that? But there's also Maomao's adventure outside of the royal palace, I guess, for season 3, because I don't know how long it's going to take for Jinshi to rescue Maomao and how it's all going to play out. But I would really like to see how Maomao breaks open this conspiracy and sort of pieces together who's the mastermind behind all of this, because this has been going on for a while, and whoever the person is behind it, they are quite clever and they know what they're doing, and they are trying to piece all of their puzzles together. And I think the last one would be targeting the emperor specifically, but then she's been trying to stir up all of this in terms of trying to stay in the shadows. But I'm not sure why she broke out Maomao, because that is one of the stupidest things that you can ever do, because Maomao is a linchpin in all of this. Maomao is the one thing that could make or break the whole operation for this person, this lady or this gentleman, whoever this is. Because if you get Maomao out, sure, you would be able to stop somebody who's been a nuisance by your side, because Maomao was trying and able to break open all the conspiracies and save her targets. But then breaking Maomao out would also ensure that everybody that cherishes and loves Maomao would be hell or high water after this person and would try and take her down directly rather than confronting her or him behind the scenes. So, wow, that is a stupid move, but I'm not really sure why they did this. But again, let's see how it plays out in season 3. But I think one of the most important and the best part of season 2 was Maomao finding out Jinshi's Soku frog. And the scene, oh my god. I'm so glad I watched it at night. And because I was watching on TV and I didn't really know what was going to happen and they fell into the hole. And Maomao and Jinshi were all, almost dried, but they were still quite wet, and they fell upon each other. And I was like, yes, this is one of the scenes where everyone has the scenes where they fall upon each other, and they sort of try and talk to each other. But no, Maomao decides to go out of her way and touch Jinshi's frog, and quite vigorously, I might add. And at one point I was blushing and I was like, just stop it, lady. What are you doing? But Jinshi was all, no, stop, Maomao, don't do this. And the boy was enjoying it. Like, at no point did he make a physical move to sort of stop her. He was just withering under her and be like, oh no, stop it, don't touch that. And I was like, Jinshi, please. But I guess that did solve one of Jinshi's problem, because now he doesn't have to confront Maomao head on, because Maomao is to some point indirectly aware of what or who Jinshi is, and that was a really good way for her to find out Jinshi's secret. And that was actually such a good scene to understand the dynamics as well, because at one point Jinshi is so used to being served, because he's grown up in a place where he has been treated as the crown prince, even though he's pretending to be a eunuch in the royal palace. So he's used to being served by other people. But when they were in the cave and Jinshi and Maomao were soaking wet, and Maomao took off her clothes without caring for any decorum, because she was like, who's gonna gaze at this flat chest and the stick and bones body? So she had no qualms about taking off her outer clothes, and she was actually contemplating taking off her inner clothes, but she was like, no, I think that's gonna be too extreme. And good call, Maomao, that it was too extreme. So she was wringing out her clothes, and when Jinshi was trying to take off his robe, Maomao went and helped him, and Jinshi was like, no, I don't want your help. Because Jinshi, who's so used to being served by the people, was uncomfortable about Maomao serving him, and being in a position where she's down on her knees and trying to take it off, because that is the position you assume with somebody who's higher than your station. And Jinshi refused, as he was uncomfortable. And I think it was also because Maomao was essentially under things and he didn't want her to be too close to him, because his frog's still functioning. But it was also because he was quite uncomfortable with Maomao serving him, because he does not want her to serve him. He wants her to stand side by side with him. And then obviously they wring out the clothes, they try and make heads and tails of the situation, and they go out of the cave, and Maomao falls on Jinshi and she goads him. She knowingly goads him. Like, this lady, she was trying to sidestep Jinshi when he was trying to explain to her, and he literally held her in place and said, I need to tell you something, and Maomao was like, no, I didn't want to hear it, la 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 la, and she literally she literally drowned out Jinshi in all of her, frog nonsense. And, she was fugitively just holding her ears and be like, la 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 la, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to get into this anymore than I already am, and I'm done. I don't want to be involved in this anymore. And Jinshi was trying so hard, and, Maomao pushed him over the brink, and Maomao understood that. She knew what she was doing when she goaded Jinshi, and he was on her. And to anyone, that was not a scene where Maomao was uncomfortable, because you do know Maomao has a lot of poisons up her sleeves. She's needles buried under her. So at no point was Maomao incapacitated because of what Jinshi was doing, because Maomao is more than capable of trying to break out of this. And if Jinshi knew that Maomao was uncomfortable, he would have stopped. He would have pulled back. And because the dog came and, stopped it, Jinshi was quite frustrated. But, and then he, gave her the exposure, and, he tried to hear her out. He tried to tell her, and then Maomao was completely out of it, because then she should have explained it before giving it to her. But him staying out of her room and explaining via the door was a way of him respecting her, because he could have just blown apart the door and, forced his way in, because he is technically of higher station, and Maomao is somebody who is working under him, and Maomao does not have that much agency, and she should have had to obey whatever he was saying. But the fact that she was comfortable saying no and Jinshi was accepting of a no already highlights the way that their stations are changing, and Jinshi wants it to change. One thing I'm quite curious about is, we all know Jinshi is Emperor's son. And, we all know that, he is going to claim his position in the next season, because if he needs to rescue Maomao from that place, he needs that position. He needs that tag of the Crown Prince in order to command an army and storm that palace, because palace eunuchs can't go out. Only the Crown Prince can go out. And then she needs that identity. But also, at one point in the episode, Adohi was standing in for Jinshi because she's so similar to him. And something that Maomao has made an observation as well when Adohi was leaving the palace, that Jinshi and Adohi appear so similar, to the fact that, you can superimpose both of them on each other. But when that cold lady was on the grave and, Jinshi got her and she finally got a good look at Jinshi's face, and you saw her look at him and picture the emperor because of the way that they looked so similar. But then Jinshi and Adohi looked so similar as well. And none of them look similar to the emperor. Because I thought that maybe, emperor took the gene from his mother, the Empress Dowager. So the Empress Dowager and emperor look similar, but Jinshi took after Adohi, her being his mother. But then how did Adohi take after the old emperor? Was this also a case of in marriage between all of them? Because when they went to the shrine, the emperor was indirectly telling Jinshi that, people inside the court are not going to be happy if, you try and bring people from the outside, because a lot of times in marriage is very much encouraged. So was Adohi and emperor's marriage in marriage? Because as far as I know, Adohi and emperor were childhood friends. And to this day, after Adohi was expelled from the palace, she considered emperor an old friend rather than an ex-husband. And she was his playmate, who eventually ended up becoming one of his highest consorts. And she left the palace because, she really didn't want that position anymore. She wanted to work in an official capacity. And being in an imperial harem was something that she didn't want, because it was a position with too many strings attached, and she didn't want that. She wanted more freedom. She wanted to go out. So how does that play out? Because Adohi looks like Jinshi, and Jinshi looks like the old emperor. But then the current emperor is Jinshi's father, yes. But how is Adohi so similar to the old emperor? I need somebody to make me a relationship chart after the third season, because I know there's so many things that I'm missing over here, because I have no idea who's who and what's what, because I'm only following the anime. I haven't read the novel or the manga, so I essentially have no idea, and I'm a clean slate at this point. But I do know that the third season is going to answer a lot of questions. So I do need somebody to make a relationship chart and tell me clearly who's who, because it's very mind-boggling. And because everyone is apparently related to everyone. And even a storyline in the story, who would have thought that, a Ghost Stories episode that was not at all related to the whole of Apothecary Diaries. It has nothing to do with Apothecary. It has nothing to do with Rare Palace. It's just a place for old court ladies to gather around new court ladies and, have a ghost story night as a way of amusing themselves. And that turned out to be the court lady who is indirectly related to this person who has been targeting the Imperial Palace and who is essentially faked her own death. Then coming into Rare Palace as a eunuch and then breaking Maomao out of the Rare Palace, kidnapped Maomao essentially. And so you have to pay attention to every single thing, and because if you lose your focus on one thing, you are quite thrown out of the story. But I really do appreciate the callbacks, like I said, and the Ghost Stories episode was such a good way to highlight the plight of the court ladies, because in a way resentment has been brewing in the Rare Palace, because these ladies who have done no crime, who have nothing to do with this Rare Palace, are being shackled in it just because the emperor touched them once. And you have to realize that they were children. All of these ladies were kids, 10, 12 years old, when the emperor touched them. So they have been shackled to this Rare Palace, forced to do menial jobs, forced to this life, not being able to go out, not being able to step out into the real world because the emperor touched them once. And it's such a sorry plight. And Mama realized that, there's something brewing it over here, and that's resentment, because you will come to resent this life. And in the Ghost Lady episode, Tai Huo, the court lady who was conducting the ghost story session, when she died, she was not there physically, but she was there emotionally, and she was tied to that place. And she wanted to take these ladies with her, because why should I suffer? Why should I be the only one who's being subjected to this? I want these people to come with me. Because that is a resented response to something. And I could understand the resentment towards the old emperor, towards the establishment that has kept them shackled to this place, even after the old emperor died. Because, even though there's a new emperor in the seat, you can't go against the previous emperor because, that's like going against your parents. And that's a bad thing because it can dissent in the current emperor's reign. So in order for him to balance the scales, he can only do reforms in the people that are coming under his reign, but can only do so much for the people who are under the previous emperor's reigns. And that's such a sad state of affairs. But it's also the way that things work in the royal palace. And anyways, I am looking forward to seeing Jinshi completely lose it and, tear off his Jinshi mask and pull up his socks and become the crown prince of the nation. And I really am looking forward to how people are going to react, when in former eunuch reveals to be the current emperor's child. Because Gyokyu-hee is about to give birth. Li Hua-hee is supposedly pregnant. So one of those ladies can have a male heir. So I'm quite curious to see how it's going to play out, because if one of those ladies have a male heir, Jinshi is going to be a thorn in their side. So is Jinshi going to take up his crown prince position only to break Mama out and then, give it up? Or is he going to hold it for a little bit longer to stabilize the nation and then sort of pass it on? Well, I don't know, but let's see. We also got introduced to Lahan, Lahan's adopted child, and Mama's stepbrother. I would really like to see them interact because they're so similar. And, the way the La clan is so similar in their antics, and you're seeing him. It's almost like you're seeing Maomao standing in front of them. And I think that's why Jinshi was so less on guard with Lahan, because, he really did remind him of Maomao with the cat ears and the tail swishing across when he tried to put down the charges for the Royal Palace store that his father destroyed, because it's probably going to cost a fortune to repair it. And Lacan's initial reaction to hearing that Mama's been missing for a while, and he's just rushing out, "Where's my child? Daddy's coming to rescue you." Because it was so cute. And I do wish that after Mama comes back, where she's allowed to go out to the Royal Palace, and she visits the La family and she's welcomed in, because Lahan is going to be a good brother to Maomao. I can envision that. And Lacan is ready to be a good father to Maomao, even though I'm not sure how that's going to play out. But, I do wish that Maomao would spend some time with them, and because she does need that feeling of being a child, basically, and not having to look behind your back all the time and just enjoy yourself and not being in the fear of being sold off by your own grandmother. The lady of the Pleasure Palace is her grandmother. But I just wanted to be a child for once. To dress up, to play around, goof around, just play around with the poisons and just have the life that she wants without worrying about anything or anyone, really. So I do wish to see that more in season 3, because I do believe that once Jinshi rescues Mama out, probably the Love family is going to make their case and try and get Mama out of the palace and into their home for recuperating, I think. And Jinshi's probably going to be against it, but I doubt he's going to go against the Love family and Mama's father, because if he does want to marry Mama and have a future with her, her parents are probably going to have to say yes to him. And he doesn't want to burn his bridges with Lacan, who's known to be really eccentric and not easy to deal with. But that's for season 3, and it's probably going to be a year or so before it comes out, so hold on to your horses, we can do this. And that was my final review for Apothecary Diaries season 2, and the way I had such a good time watching it. And if you're holding off, it's completed, you can go ahead and watch it. And I probably am going to pick up the light novel and the manga in the meantime and get some spoilers, because I really don't think I can wait for season 3 to be released. I really do want to know what happens next, and I hope they do put out an official announcement at some point, because it is going to take them at least a year to come back with a good quality episode, because it does take a lot of time and effort to animate these things. And I appreciate the way they put little details in it, and if they want to take their time, so be it. And do let me know how you guys found season 2 of Apothecary Diaries, and do let me know in the comments how epic you think Jinmao's reunion is going to be, because it's going to be a few months before they reunite, because right now it's been 10 days since Mama's missing, and it's probably going to be like 3-4 months before they even meet together, so yay. So Jinshi's probably going to lose it and not let Mama out of his side, but do let me know in the comments. And Talk About Drama is now available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, Amazon Podcast, and Audible. You can also reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram. My handle is talk_about_drama, and do leave me a comment and just tell me how you're coping with the finale of season 2 and what exactly you're looking forward to in season 3. Like, I would really appreciate the spoilers. And that's it for today. I hope you guys have a good week, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then, ciao.